China is building ports around the world because ports are control points. They sit where land power meets sea power. They decide what moves, what waits, what gets inspected, what gets delayed, and what gets priced. A port looks like concrete, cranes, berths, warehouses, customs gates, dredged channels, fuel tanks, and container stacks. In strategic terms, it is a switchboard. Beijing understands this with unusual clarity. China's economy runs through maritime trade. Its factories need energy, metals, food, machinery, chemicals, and components. Its exports need reliable routes into Europe, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. Its navy needs access points beyond the Chinese coast. Its diplomats need leverage. Its state-owned firms need contracts. Its banks need large projects to finance. A port gives Beijing all five. This is why Chinese official entities and state-owned firms financed nearly $24 billion in loans and grants for 363 seaport-related projects at 168 ports in 90 countries from 2000 to 2025, according to Aid Data's CPORTS 2.0 dataset. That is a global maritime footprint built one berth and loan agreement at a time. The first reason is trade. China became the workshop of the world by mastering flows. Raw materials come in, finished goods go out. The whole system depends on ships, ports, terminals, rail links, and customs procedures. A factory in Guangdong means little if containers wait offshore for weeks. A steel mill means little if iron ore cannot arrive on schedule. Supply chains are boring until they break. Then every government suddenly discovers the poetry of container logistics, which is a tragic day for poets. Ports reduce friction. A Chinese-built port in East Africa can move minerals, agricultural goods, and manufactured products faster. A port in South Asia can connect inland railroads to sea lanes. A port in Europe can serve as a distribution node for Chinese exports. The Belt and Road Initiative works through this logic. It links sea terminals, roads, railways, power plants, pipelines, and industrial zones into a larger commercial network. The OECD found that many of the most advanced Belt and Road port projects sit along existing maritime routes, including places tied to the Suez route, the Strait of Malacca, Djibouti, Piraeus, and other major trade corridors. That matters. China is often strengthening routes that already carry global commerce rather than building fantasy harbors in empty water. The second reason is energy security. China imports large volumes of oil and gas by sea. Much of that energy moves through choke points such as the Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandeb, the Strait of Malacca, and the Suez Canal route. These are narrow passages where geography turns into strategy. A tanker has fewer choices than a diplomat. Ports give China options along those routes. A commercial port can support refueling, repair, warehousing, and transshipment. A logistics hub near a choke point gives Chinese firms and officials better information about maritime flows. Even when a port remains civilian, it gives China presence. Presence becomes awareness. Awareness becomes leverage. Djibouti shows the pattern. China opened its first overseas military base in Djibouti in 2017. The location is near the Bab el-Mandeb, the Gulf of Aden, and the route toward the Suez Canal. It sits beside one of the most important maritime corridors in the world. That base supports Chinese naval operations, anti-piracy patrols, evacuation missions, and broader Indian Ocean activity. That brings us to the third reason: naval access. China is building a blue water navy. A blue water navy requires more than ships. It needs fuel, food, ammunition handling, spare parts, medical support, maintenance facilities, crew rest, secure communications, and friendly ports. A warship without logistics becomes an expensive steel tourist. The United States built its global military reach through bases, alliances, ports, depots, and access agreements. China is building a different version. It uses commercial infrastructure first. State-owned firms build or operate ports. Banks finance the project. Local governments welcome the investment. Later, the same infrastructure can support naval visits, intelligence collection, and contingency operations. This is the dual-use model. A deep-water berth can handle container ships and military auxiliaries. A fuel depot can serve commercial vessels and naval ships. A port management system can improve cargo scheduling and gather valuable shipping data. A logistics part can store consumer goods in peacetime and military supplies during a crisis. CSIS has warned that Chinese port projects raise security concerns because many commercial ports can support naval activity. In its analysis of Chinese port activity in the Global South, CSIS estimated that 55 of 70 commercial port projects had potential naval use, while 10 involved Chinese majority ownership. That does mean every Chinese port becomes a naval base. The better assessment is more precise. Ports create options. China is buying optionality. Optionality matters in a crisis. During a Taiwan conflict, Indian Ocean crisis, Red Sea disruption, or US-China confrontation, China would need to protect sea lines, monitor allied logistics, move people, evacuate citizens, and keep trade alive. Overseas ports can support those missions. They can also complicate US planning. The Atlantic Council assessed that China's overseas port network could help collect intelligence, disrupt US and allied logistics, and support pre-positioning or resupply for Chinese forces in wartime. That is the hard edge of the story. The fourth reason is political leverage. Infrastructure financing creates relationships. A port loan binds a host government to Chinese banks, Chinese firms, Chinese construction crews, Chinese technical standards, and sometimes Chinese operators. The host country gets a visible project. China gets a long-term position inside the country's economic machinery. This arrangement appeals to many governments. Ports are expensive. Western financing can be slow, conditional, and tangled in governance requirements. Chinese financing often arrives with speed, scale, and a full package: design, financing, construction, equipment, and operation. For leaders who need a ribbon cutting before the next election, this has obvious charm. Democracy often moves like a committee trying to assemble furniture without the screws. Beijing shows up with a crane. The political effect can last decades. Hambantota in Sri Lanka became the signature example. After debt stress and weak commercial performance, Sri Lanka granted China Merchants Port Holdings a controlling stake and a 99-year lease in 2017. CSIS described the port's economics as weak compared with Colombo's existing capacity, and noted concerns about future naval use. Hambantota also teaches a careful lesson. The lazy version says China builds useless ports to trap countries. The stronger version says Chinese financing can turn weak governance, elite ambition, debt pressure, and strategic geography into long-term Chinese leverage. Local elites make choices. Beijing exploits openings. Both can be true at the same time, which is why international politics keeps scholars employed and taxpayers spiritually tired. The fifth reason is data. Modern ports are information systems with water attached. They track containers, manifests, ship arrivals, ownership patterns, routes, cargo types, customs records, insurance documents, crew movements, and delays. Whoever operates the terminal sees patterns. That data has commercial value. It also has strategic value. Port data can reveal which companies supply which factories. It can show where military cargo may be moving. It can identify dependence on specific routes, minerals, components, and food imports. It can help Chinese firms compete. It can help Chinese intelligence services understand allied logistics. A crane lifts boxes. The software sees the empire. The sixth reason is industrial export. China has excess capacity in construction, steel, cement, dredging, engineering, telecom systems, surveillance systems, port cranes, rail equipment, and power infrastructure. Overseas port construction gives Chinese state-owned enterprises work. It also exports Chinese standards. Standards matter. A country that uses Chinese port management software, Chinese cranes, Chinese telecom systems, Chinese financing, and Chinese training becomes easier for Beijing to work with and harder for rivals to displace. Infrastructure creates habits. Habits become dependence. Dependence becomes policy gravity. This is why ports often come with industrial parks and rail links. A port by itself moves goods from ship to shore. A port linked to rail, highways, power, and customs zones can reorganize a national economy around a Chinese-built corridor. Gwadar in Pakistan fits this logic. It gives China a strategic position near the Arabian Sea and supports the China-Pakistan economic corridor. The commercial results have been uneven, but the geography remains valuable. China also uses ports to enter regions where American power has grown complacent. Latin America is a clear case. CSIS assessed China's involvement in 37 port projects across Latin America and the Caribbean. Those projects vary from financing and construction to ownership and operational control by Chinese state-owned firms. That region matters because it sits near the Panama Canal, U.S. southern approaches, energy routes, agricultural exports, and mineral supply chains. A Chinese role in port infrastructure there gives Beijing commercial influence in America's strategic neighborhood. Washington spent decades treating geography as a solved problem. Geography has a rude habit of returning to the meeting. Europe matters too. Piraeus in Greece became China's gateway into southeastern Europe. Greece formally agreed in 2016 to sell a 67% stake in the port of Piraeus to China COSCO, according to UNCTAD's investment policy record. That port gives China a major node near the Mediterranean, the Balkans, and the route from the Suez Canal into Europe. It shows how financial crises can open strategic doors. When states need cash, infrastructure becomes negotiable. The seventh reason is narrative power. China presents port building as development. The message is simple: Beijing builds, the West lectures. In many countries, that message lands. Roads, bridges, and ports are visible. Governance seminars are less photogenic. A container terminal may lack majesty, but it beats a white paper in a hard hat. This gives China diplomatic credit. Ports create jobs, or at least promise them. They give host leaders physical proof of foreign partnership. They make China look practical. In regions tired of Western conditionality, Chinese infrastructure feels direct and transactional. The risk is that host countries can inherit debt, corruption, environmental damage, weak labor standards, and strategic exposure. Yet many still accept the deal because their infrastructure gaps are real. China did not invent those gaps, it found them. The eighth reason is wartime denial. A Chinese-linked port can become a pressure point during conflict. Beijing may gain the ability to delay cargo, influence access, gather intelligence, or threaten disruption. Even partial influence can force adversaries to plan around uncertainty. Military planners hate uncertainty. It makes PowerPoint multiply like swamp insects. A port does not need to become a Chinese base to matter. If it can slow Allied logistics, expose shipping patterns, shape local politics, or complicate access, it has strategic value. The port becomes a piece on the board. The United States and its allies face a hard problem here. They cannot order countries to reject Chinese financing while offering no credible alternative. They cannot treat every Chinese-built port as a military base without losing analytical discipline. They cannot ignore the dual-use risk because the pattern is real. The answer is competition. Offer financing that moves faster. Build ports with trusted vendors. Help countries audit contracts. Support port cybersecurity. Track ownership structures. Harden Allied logistics. Expand access agreements. Train customs and maritime authorities. Treat commercial infrastructure as strategic terrain. China is building ports because it sees the world through flows. Goods flow, fuel flows, data flows, debt flows, influence flows. Naval power flows behind all of it. A port concentrates those flows in one place. The next decade will test whether China can convert commercial presence into sustained strategic power. Some projects will underperform. Some host countries will push back. Some ports will remain ordinary commercial assets. Others will become logistics nodes for a Chinese navy operating farther from home. The map is already changing. China is building the bones of maritime influence. Concrete first, contracts second, software third, Access fourth. Flags later, where conditions allow.
That is the pattern. The port is the product, the network is the strategy.